Just one of those times, I guess, being an Arizona Coyotes fan. Welcome back to 986 The Howl. So it's finally done. Grueling process. Frustrating at times. Thankfully, it's over. We haven't seen a trade deadline like this from a Coyotes perspective in a really long time. Probably since 2015. I already made that video on the history of the Coyotes. Usually very quiet around the deadline for whatever reasons. The bulk of their roster changes happened in the off seasons, but this year, the trade deadline was heating up. We had some value to actually give away this time. People, players on expiring contract, or a player that wanted out, or management wanted to move on from. So it's finally happened. Had a couple of days to mull over the Chikrin and Gostisbehere trade. But let's see what the Coyotes did. What did they receive? What did they give away? And we'll start with giving it away. My trade bait board was pretty much accurate. Three big names. Obviously, I didn't, assume they would trade, guys like Deneen, Gillies, and Mayo. But more minor league trades that, they're not coming off the Coyotes roster. All three of those guys in Tucson for the most part. Mayo just got called up recently due to the Chikrin being sat out for trade-related reasons, and Gostisbehere, dealing with that injury. Josh Brown injured as well. So let's get into what they received. We'll begin with most valuable to least valuable, I would say, except for the bottom three. So the big one is the 2023 first-round pick from Ottawa. Already went through it on my Chikrin trade video. After a couple of days of thinking about it a bit more, it's going to be probably between 10 and a 16th overall pick. And to be honest, that's very valuable in this upcoming draft. And if you look around the league at other teams' first round picks other than their own, if you look at the tank teams, the Coyotes have the best second pick other than themselves. Anaheim only has one pick. Columbus has two picks, the other one being LA. Chicago has two picks, the other one being Tampa. San Jose's got two picks, the other one being New Jersey. Montreal is making a case. Their second pick is from Florida. And the other front runner, I think, in this year's first round only, I'm looking at in a vacuum, St. Louis. Not a tank team, but they probably got the best first round value. Moving on from this deadline, you have three picks, their own, and then one of New York or Dallas, whichever is a later pick, and then Toronto. If Toronto, continues the pattern of being eliminated in the first round, not being a divisional winner, that pick, a 19th overall pick probably. So I think St. Louis rivals the Coyotes. The Coyotes have their own first round pick, and Ottawa's is top 5 protected, looking like between 10 and 16. So that's, I think, the best one. Montreal, Florida is battling with Ottawa for a playoff spot, so maybe that Florida pick might be below Ottawa's. But you never know. For me, if there was any team to bet on to, hit a rough skid or have some unfortunate event happen to them, it's probably the Ottawa Senators. First, it would be Arizona. But if you're an Arizona fan hoping for misery, the next team up is probably Ottawa. I know Senators fans don't want to hear that. They had a pretty remarkable win against the Rangers last night. So they're pumped up. They got a pretty easy schedule for the next few games. I think one against Columbus, one against Chicago. But the remaining 18 games for the Senators are against some really tough teams. So for the Coyotes fans, we're just scoreboard watching. They get 2 seconds as well from Chikrin. They get 1 second is from Washington in next draft, and Ottawa in 2026. The Coyotes, as you can see here, 3, 6, 8 draft picks in this deadline. They have about 42 draft picks over the next 3 years. It's ridiculous. And, they're not going to use all these draft picks because obviously you can't have that many players on a roster. You only could have 50 contracts, I believe, and that's between NHL, AHL, and then whatever, young prospects you've signed to a contract. Like, we've already signed Geeky to a contract, so he counts, I'm pretty sure. So, they're not going to use all 42 and get 42 new players The Coyotes, they're used to trading up, getting a bunch of picks, lower picks, and trading up. We saw that last draft with Dvorak's pick and Kemper's pick. Dvorak's pick was Carolina's, was 27th overall. Bill Armstrong packaged that with 2 second-rounders to jump to 11 to draft the aforementioned Geeky. And then for Kemper, it was a 32nd pick, obviously, because the Avalanche won the Cup. And they packaged that with they got Cassian back. So instead of adding a draft pick, they got Kemper's pick, and they added Cassian, and then they jumped to number 29 to draft Lamoureux, who's a defenseman, a long-term project. So the Coyotes aren't afraid and ain't no stranger to, gathering their picks and trading up and getting a player they like. And what's different about this rebuild, I know a lot of other fans from other teams on socials are dunking on the Coyotes for numerous reasons. We'll get to that later. But this is the first time the Coyotes have actually a really good scouting department. Bill Armstrong, immediately, as soon as he got hired by the Coyotes, revamped the whole scouting department, scouted for elite talents that are veterans in the scouting department and on other teams. One guy from Buffalo, one guy from the Avalanche, a bunch of others. Just developed a really good scouting department first. And now the job since then has been accumulating as much draft picks as possible so they can hit on them. And their track record so far, I know it's so early, it's only been like 2 drafts for Bill Armstrong, but guys like Moser, who's a second-round pick and already on the Coyotes, making an impact and making a difference on the ice already. Gunther, we've seen from him. Geeky, Cooley is having one of the best seasons in college right now. So, I trust, this is the first time where I really trust the whole scouting department. It's not just one guy like it was with Don Maloney and John Shaika, where they were just calling the shots. So I have more trust. Bill Armstrong's a good team around him. Bill Armstrong himself, he's been in the league for a really long time. He started as a scout, then he helped build the St. Louis Blues into a Cup champion, and now it's his turn to be in charge and develop the Coyotes, hopefully, to a consistent playoff team at least. So that's a Chychrun trade, 1 first and 2 seconds. Yes, underwhelming. I think it's underwhelming. There's no impact. Everyone wanted the first 2 first-round picks. I think why it's underwhelming is because the asking price was publicly known, and it was known for a long time. Mix that in with how long Chychrun's been in trade rumors, and the fact that he was out for almost 3 weeks for trade-related reasons. All those things. I'm going to take a little zip here. I think all of those things just accumulated to such high expectations, which is why I feel it is underwhelming right now. I'm sure once the draft comes and goes and we get a good player with the Ottawa pick, I'll start to realize, and I'm starting to realize a little bit now, like maybe we're valuing Chychrun. Maybe we were so lucky in trading OEL and Garland to such a bad GM to get 9th overall. We traded Dvorak, who I valued high, who I thought was a really good player, for, like I said, the 27th overall. We traded Kemper, an amazing goaltender, for 32nd overall. So we're trading Chychrun between 10th and 16th overall. I know in the future I'm going to say that's a good trade, but obviously with all the context and all the hype, the expectations, all the scenarios and situations happening around Chychrun, the rumors, the endless rumors, just right now, it was a bit underwhelming. And coming from the next player, Gostisbehere, coming right after that Gostisbehere trade, which I think is a bad trade. It's not underwhelming. I just think it's flat out bad. Only a 3rd-round pick for Gostisbehere in 2026 coming from Carolina. I get it. The money, that's why, the Chychrun trade also is a bit underwhelming, but Gostisbehere is just flat out bad. The money in, money out. The Coyotes are trying to save money. They're trying not to spend money as well. And the CEO has been coming out this whole season saying we're going to run a lean team. The Coyotes are going to run a lean budget. I really didn't know what that meant. I just thought that meant, yeah, you're not going to go out and sign free agents to an 8x8 deal, obviously. But now it's come to fruition what it really means It means that, if we could not retain any salary, if we don't add money on our books, that's valuable. And from the organization standpoint, from a fan standpoint, you want a second round pick for Gossespierre, or at least me, I hoped for a first. But an organization's viewpoint, if you can save money, if you can save all that millions of dollars, that's worth a third round pick instead. If it was between a second round pick and spending $1 million, or a third round pick and no money, the organization prioritizes a third round pick with no money. It's hard to swallow as a fan, but that's just how it is. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it where the owner of your team is building an arena and an entertainment complex out of his own pocket, not taxpayers' money, and you can't also have him spend money, on roster players and gearing up for a playoff push right now. The vote for Tempe, the new arenas in May. I heard that if the vote gets voted yes, like immediately, the owner Alex Morello has to spend about $40 million right away. I don't know if that's correct. I just heard it. Not sure where I heard it from. That could be wrong. But, let's say that does happen. It makes sense how they're trying to shed as much salary and legally use loopholes to ice an NHL team with being cap compliant and reaching the cap floor. But, other fans were dunking on the Coyotes. I'll jump to the Voracek trade where we traded, Gillies to acquire Voracek's cap hit. And we also got a 6th round pick in doing so. These players, Voracek, and like I mentioned in the Weber video, these guys aren't playing. They're injured. Their careers are pretty much, it is over. But that's $8 million against the cap. The Coyotes don't need to spend in free agency or signing contracts or making trades just to reach the cap floor. Next season, it's going to be a bunch of entry-level contract players, plus Keller, Schmaltz, and Krause, who are making the most money on the team, and then a bunch of ELCs, and then using Weber's and Voracek's cap hit to reach the floor. So in essence, they are saving money. They're not spending $8 million on each of these players. That's just cap hit. It's not actual money the Coyotes are paying. So that's a way to save money. It's interesting. It's smart. We've never seen it before. It's pretty, unprecedented that a team is taking on salary, taking on a cap hit to use that as a salary circumvention to reach the cap floor. Usually teams do that to go over the cap so that they could spend in the free market and upgrade their team to be a Stanley Cup contender. So it's just the opposite. It's new. The Coyotes like to do new things. They're trendsetters. And, when old school hockey fans see something new, they tend to, overreact and attack. And it's usually the Coyotes on the receiving end of that. So I'm a bit all over the place, but, a lot of thoughts. Again, I think the 6th round pick for Voracek, the 5th round pick from Vegas for Weber, they're a bit cheap in comparison to what we've seen before. We got Brian Little for a 4th, Andrew Ladd for a 2nd, Gossespierre for a 2nd, plus Gossespierre. We've taken on money and like the Roussel, Erickson, and Beagle as well. Like in the past, we've spent money, like real money, on players to get good returns on our trades. This season, we didn't want any money, and it lowered the returns of the trade. So you got to look at money. I'm realizing that now. I really don't take that into account, but I guess I should. So that's why the returns are a bit low compared to what we've seen before, because we're not actually spending money or taking money off anyone's books. So that's why, you get a 5th and a 6th. And then we go to Bukestad, who got traded yesterday, the last major piece to get traded to Edmonton for a 3rd round pick in 2023. He goes along with Cam Dineen for, like I said, a 3rd round pick, plus a prospect, an actual player who plays tonight, who plays in his NHL debut tonight for the Coyotes, Kessel Ring. And no, it is not the 2 rings of Phil Kessel. It's not his 2 Stanley Cup rings that the Coyotes are going to pawn off and use it to pay their bills. His name is really Kessel Ring. I hope he wears number 81. I know he won't, but it would be funny if he did. He's a huge defenseman. 6'5", 220 pounds, a former sixth-round pick in 2018 by the Oilers. He's second in the AHL in terms of goals for defensemen. He's got 13 goals, 22 points in 49 games played. He will be sort of like that big defenseman, sort of like Josh Brown, which is probably why Kessel Ring, that's an awful name to say, Kessel Ring, that's pretty much why he's playing tonight, because Josh Brown is day to day and he's injured, and he brings that toughness to the blue line where Kolyachonok and Soderstrom don't really bring that physicalness to our defensive line. So I'm interested. It's a shiny new toy. I hope there was more, but this is the only new toy we got at the deadline among all these draft picks. And I guess I've mentioned everyone. It was pretty crazy. Yesterday was a really bad time on social media. I don't know why this Voracek trade ignited everyone to just, jump on the Coyotes. I guess, like I said, it's something new, something unprecedented. Like I said, for those people, fans of other teams, it's not because the Coyotes are poor. It's because they're using that money to build a new arena. So, you got to save money somewhere. And it's a pretty wise, smart, and interesting way to save money. You're sort of spending money in terms of cap, figuratively, you're spending money, but in real dollars, you're not spending anything. It's interesting. And if other fans of the other teams, they're saying, oh, how can it's not fair for Coyotes fans to pay and watch such a depleted team where the owners aren't spending money. Like, this year's Coyotes is so much better than last year's Coyotes, and it's a lower payroll, and they're not, having overpaid guys on the roster like Erickson, Beagle, and Roussel, and some other anchors, or Andrew Ladd. It's like, just because you're not spending money on the team on the ice doesn't mean they're all bad players. Like, Keller's good. I know he gets paid a lot, Keller, Schmaltz. But everyone works well. They're all fun to watch. It's one of the most exciting Coyotes teams to watch in recent memory. And then next year, they're going to add all these ELC players who are good. Like, Cooley's going to be amazing. Maybe in a pipe dream they do get Bedard, or they get a really good high draft pick who gets in the lineup. And just because they're getting paid $900,000 doesn't mean they're not exciting to watch and entertaining. So I really don't get that sort of narrative that they're not spending money on the ice and the fans are getting hurt by this and not watching an NHL caliber team. Whereas you look at the Chicago Blackhawks, and I can't tell you 5 of their forwards right off the top of my head. Tyler Johnson, Anthony Ciu, and Radish, and Kara, and that's pretty much it. That's 4 guys out of their whole forward group. Just take a look at their roster. That's actually a bad roster, even down to their defensemen, who I only know is Seth Jones and obviously Connor Murphy. And then the goalie is Stalock. Like, that is actually such a terrible roster that I would not spend money to go watch. At least the Coyotes have young, exciting players who they've drafted and developed over the years. And, some highly touted draft picks in the lineup, like Barrett Hayden's on it as well. So I think I went off a little bit there on the Chicago Blackhawks, but a frustrating time. I'm just glad it's over. Get back to hockey. From here on out, I'm just hoping that the Coyotes improve their lottery odds. Hoping Ottawa loses more than they win to increase that value of the first round pick, and hopefully the voting goes well in May. And I'm sure we'll all be looking at that for the next couple of months. It's in 2 months or 3 months, so that's coming up pretty close. That's it for me. Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, spread the word. And as always, thank you for your support. I knew I should have waited till at least 3:30. I recorded this at 3 p.m. One last trade. Elite sniper Nick Ritchie. I'm pretty sure Bill Armstrong just loves to troll this league. Trades Ritchie for his brother in Calgary for Brett Ritchie. And then we also add in Stetcher for Connor Mackey. Connor Mackey, pretty good American Hockey League season last year. 36 points in 53 games played, but is only, accumulated 3 points in 10 games with the Calgary Flames. Mostly scratched most nights. For me, this is hilarious how a brother's traded for a brother. I think this has to be the only time this has ever happened. Nick Ritchie, Stetcher, they tried. They put their efforts there. More Stetcher than Ritchie recently. I feel like Ritchie's been a bit of a ghost for the past month, maybe more than a month. I know we always meme about him being the elite sniper. But again, money in, money out. Ritchie's cap hit, Nick Ritchie, is 2.5, Stetcher 1.25. The two guys coming back are league minimum about 900 grand to 750 grand. So prorated, there's only 20 games left. I'm sure the Coyotes probably save $1 million. And maybe Mackey just goes back down to Tucson since we're using Kolyachonok and Victor Soderstrom, taking them away from the Roadrunners. So that's it. I wasn't going to do over the whole video. So, unfortunately there was another trade. But, pretty minor, to be honest. Stetcher, 0 goals for the Coyotes. Ritchie's been pretty much a ghost for 2 months. He's mainly, some comedic relief as for Coyotes fans. So that's it for me. Again, thank you for watching. If you like what you see, spread the word. And as always, thank you for your support.